Terima kasih. Selamat pagi. That's good, now you're all awake, thank you very much. I'm not Gen AI generated, I am the real Jan, not the Gen AI John. So I will have to speak English now and not Bahasa, apologies for that. Thank you very much for a fantastic objective market overview from our friends from IDC here as well. It couldn't have been better. We actually did not align anything in terms of messages, but I think you will see and hear a lot of similarity in the messaging here around the readiness for Gen AI and how we capture the business opportunity around this. And before we start, again, always a good look backwards around three technologies. Let me just ask a question. Who in this room has internet at home? I know some of you are modest. Who of you has internet at the business? I know all of you have. Who of you has a mobile phone? Of course. Who of you has a PC? All of those are fundamental technologies. At the beginning, we heard the questions of what is the use case for the internet? I don't know if some of you may not have been born, others are too young, but you know, some of that really. A use case for the internet at the time was a question, who needs this? Maybe some defense department, highly specialized. How many PCs do we need? IBM had a very clear view, it was a very limited market size. How many mobile phones are there? Right? So you can see that all of those technologies are now fundamental today in our daily life and have revolutionized the way we are running our lives and businesses. And all of those cycles have accelerated, and we heard it before. The AI, Gen AI journey has already started many years ago, but it's absolutely accelerated over the last 18 months into, I like that word, the Gen AI scramble. I'm going to pick up on that one and share that as well. So the time pressure has absolutely increased, and it actually has led to the fact that we need to be much more faster and focused and learning from the past how we approach those transformational technologies. And that's how we at NTT Data look at Gen AI and AI in its new shape. It's a transformational technology. It's not a bolt-on, it's not a pocket niche application. It's transformational to the way we look at the business and the value we create for our customers. And that's going to happen in the very, very fast term. So let's just see how those three fundamental technologies change industries. And you all know the music industry. Does anybody still have a vinyl record player at home? There are some DJs. There are certainly some very good. I'm not going to go through the stories of the iTunes. I think you're all familiar with how the internet, the PC, and ultimately the iPhone or the iPod, the mobility component of that, have revolutionized the business models of this industry. And really with iTunes, the breakthrough of a legal, commercial, established business model. Spotify, who's got a Spotify account? Subscription-based music consumption, right? Very different business models these days. And that's what's going to happen again. That's the beginning of the journey we're in. So Gen AI has the potential to accelerate progress exponentially. I saw that curve, I fully agree with that. I'd be almost a little bit more provocative, say there's maybe a flat line of companies. Those who get too late on that track will not exist anymore. There is no option of a late follower coming into that and then picking up. We have to be fast, but we have to be focused, and that's the real good message that came across in the previous presentation. Thank you for that. I've been asked for so many times, how do we get started? What are the use cases? Again, I'm challenging ourselves, don't get started with use cases. I like the idea of a super use case, the super nutrients in the messaging that give us the energy. We have to look at use cases to apply something. But it's not the first one. But let's just look at a couple of these things. And particularly look again at the messaging and how does a use case link to a business outcome? There is no point on talking about what the features and functionalities of something can do, have a technology conversation, if it doesn't link to a business outcome. Be it cost optimization is an obvious one, taking headcount out, being faster in product development or response time, issue resolution, revenue generating, next best activities, activating processes faster to capture the revenues, or even new revenue streams as well. Operational efficiency may not necessarily be cost savings, but maybe reduced downtime, higher quality improvements, differentiation there. AI adoption is a key enabler ultimately for that. Business insights, we talked about the panels there, really driving better decision making around the business outcome. And again, cost optimization. So it really comes in three big buckets around cost, around customer experience differentiation. Contact centers, we see a lot of that happening already in banking as well as in some of the healthcare sectors and in revenue growth. These are the three buckets of opportunities here. And in order to get to that, I'm just going to flip through this a little bit here to build this up. We've heard the growth potential, massive, it is a scramble. And we recommend, and we have some good examples with clients where we actually slow them down, saying it's good that you want to do it, that's great. But think about how ready are you for Gen AI? How available is your data? How clean is your data? Remember that the hype messages and the big models are all trained on public data. They're all trained on the internet database. But that's available to everybody, so there's no differentiation. The real conversation comes is, maybe don't show me a proof of concept, but show me a proof of value that link to business outcomes. How is that model, which I believe is working, adding value to my specific circumstances, in my operations, in my environment? How am I making different decisions that make me better? But there's a lot of caution. I think Bhaghendra, I don't know where he is now, talked about the dark side. Really important to be clear around the flip side of the coin as well. We really have to make sure that we're not blindly trusting the outputs. We have to apply human intelligence, governance, ethics, policies to the Gen AI environment. It doesn't go standalone. How do we create something new? That's obviously the question. How can we be faster in understanding massive amounts of data, generating that? One use case is lawyers. There's a new, in Europe, there's a new regulation framework coming out, and the EU is good in regulations, and typically the minimum is 150 pages of legal language. Running that through trying to digest this in the key messages is of course an accelerator to understand, but the application of that into your business is a very, very unique interpretation of that you can't give away and you don't want to do it outside. Summarize, retrieve and manage information, dispersed information across the business. How many of you have a single data lake across all of your enterprise? So all of you have dispersed information anywhere in your organization, right? How good would it be to tap into that in a faster, more efficient way, which you can with this technology? And then you need to still make sense out of it and actually find the contradictory terms or the biases in there as well. Personalize and automate your tasks. Of course, that is important to grow. I think at the end of the day, to embark that journey, there's a multitude of elements that you need to consider. To be profitable in your growth and to be on that accelerated exponential growth that we heard earlier, it's not a one silver bullet approach. It's a multitude of things, and I'm going to go out of the way so we can take a photo here. It's a multitude of things you have to consider. And as you go along the journey, some of the topics are more important than others as you walk through your maturity. But you can't ignore those pieces of the jigsaw puzzle. We really fundamentally look at it as a business transformation. This is not a technology hype. This is a business transformation, like the internet, like the mobile phone, like the PC, the way of working, the way of decision making, the way of engaging with our clients, the way of engaging with your supply chain, the way of managing and operating your business is going to fundamentally change. If we accept that as the basis premise, we then can peel the onion step by step on this one. And I'd like to highlight a little bit this part here. We absolutely see the biggest gap today around this area. And I think that's what you mentioned earlier as well. There's a lot of, oh, I want to get going, give me some use cases, I want to try something myself. And I understand it because we want to learn the tools, we want to know, we don't know what we don't know. So we want to learn what we don't know in order to then become more competent in that. But bear in mind, and we heard the statistics, I have a statistic later on, 85% of all POCs fail. I think if I did the math on your numbers, it's even higher. It's close to the 90%. So imagine you want to spend money and you know that 85–90% of this money is going to be wasted. That's not a good proposition for your board. That's not a good proposition for your career. So you actually want to turn this back and saying, how do I improve the odds on this one? If you don't know what your strategy is going to look like, if you don't know what your governance framework is going to look like, if you don't know what your maturity around the data enablement, the data environment looks like, then why bother with a POC? I'm being a little bit provocative here because you'll have a lot of those conversations. Everyone wants your money. Everyone wants the money on I call it a hit and run. Let's do a POC together and then we're off. That's not going to help you. Yes, POCs are important when you know why you do them and how you do them, and should they be successful, how we get to scalability. And that's a really important thing to think that through from the beginning. We may get things wrong and we may learn along the journey, but if you haven't charted that journey at all, you're pretty much destined to fail on that journey. And that is something we as NTT Data take very, very serious and advise our clients to really step back and not get dragged into that frenzy of activity, but really step back and say, okay, what are the minimum criteria I need to have in place? We've had a global automotive manufacturer in one of our countries in APAC who was also on the POC trip. I need to do a POC, need to do a POC. And we stepped back and said, how ready are you for this? And we've actually pivoted it now into a more fundamental data architecture, data governance, and data infrastructure readiness project. And I believe that client will be better off in 6, 9, 12 months' time, because they will have built the platform of scalability for that. So really the data component of that, as you've heard before from IDC here as well, is so critical. And whilst it's been around a while, do not underestimate it and under-prioritize it for the hyped, attractive Gen AI conversations. The next conversation around this one is, and we've heard that before, and it couldn't be a better tee-up exactly, is how do I secure the data? Because you want to make decisions based on your proprietary data. If you make the same modeling on the same data set, you will get the same outcome like everybody else. How are you going to be different? How is that driving differentiation? And how does it even fit into your strategy? It doesn't. So you want to infuse it with very specific data and assets in that sense that you have and that make you different. So how do I manage that in a public, private, hybrid environment? How do I augment the data? How do I secure the data? We're going to talk about that later as well. How do I operate at scale later on to ensure I am protecting my fundamental asset of the future of growth, which is the insights you have with your tens and hundreds of years of operational experience. Really, really important. Sometimes sounds very unsexy, forgive me if I use that word there, but if you get that wrong, no point bothering around the other fancy bells and whistles. There's another part then around the planning, so in the experimenting. It is, of course, a POC, or as I like to call it, a POV, a proof of value. Is that concept actually driving the value I'm anticipating? Can I substantiate and quantify all or parts of the benefits? How much time is truly being reduced? And sometimes we can't quantify because we rush into the technology deployment and haven't taken a baseline. We don't even know how much it's being reduced because we didn't measure how long it took beforehand. So again, it's part of a proper structured preparation to know what is my baseline against what am I comparing it. And not just build something and then see what happens. There's a lot of other elements there. For example, before we at NTT Data even started, something happened here with the mic. Can you hear me again? Okay. Before we started here in NTT Data globally, we actually sat down and defined a governance framework. We wrote down our own internal policies. And that sounds horrible. That sounds a bit like policing, unattractive, not client-facing. But it actually helped us to protect and now scale up globally our experimental phase much faster, because we knew and we had a better understanding of our playing field, what is and what isn't acceptable for us. The Norwegian sovereign fund, probably one of the biggest investment funds in the world, is actually pushing their investment companies at board level to be much more mature and aware around Gen AI technologies and the governance requirements around that. It's not about controlling the details, it's not about understanding all the technologies, but understanding how transparent, how conscious, and how consistent we're deploying and utilizing AI and Gen AI technology in the way we're running the businesses. And the responsibility of boards for this to take onto their agenda as a governing body. So really important to spend time on this one and talk with your boards, board of directors and supervisory bodies around the readiness around that. And then obviously you talk about stabilizing and expanding and growing and scaling that. Doesn't matter how you call these phases, but ultimately that's where the exponential value growth comes in. You have to press the right button. So the way we define our NTT Data strategy, in a nutshell, we obviously look at how do we help you transform your value chain. It is a transformational journey. It's not a point solution. It is deeply connected to your people, to your processes, to your systems, to your policies, to your governance body. It is a complex journey, but we can help you break this down in pieces as we go along the journey there. It's also transforming our own value chain, frankly speaking. We believe firmly, drink your own champagne, for those who like champagne, or eat your own food, etc. If we don't do what we tell others, we are not very credible. We are fundamentally changing and disrupting our own value chain. And we are learning on the back of that, what that means. It has a lot to do with change management. It has a lot to do with human factor in it as well. But that's good, that's what we've got to do. And obviously we drive a lot of internal operations in our managed services part, SecOps, we have that. A lot of AI-infused technology there. We use a multitude of tools and capabilities to drive our at-scale operating model into efficiency and quality there. But fundamentally, the foundation of that, the foundational pillars, is an end-to-end approach to how we look at Gen AI's journey. From a strategy and governance component, you have to start with that and you have to have a basic part in place. That can change over time and refine, as every strategy does, but you've got to have that in place. Yes, you have to be technology partnerships and technology using it, but don't start with it. And I'm almost doing NTT Data a disfavor in here, but we firmly believe we're not just a technology partner, we want to be your trusted partners, and we are trusted partners of innovation, and it's got to start with an end-to-end view on the business, on that transformation. And you can't do it alone. You have to have some strategic partners you can rely on that can help you invest and learn with you and infuse the global learning to that. Talent and training, there's going to be for the foreseeable future an absolute short bottleneck of talent here, and continue investing into this. And those companies who provide greatest opportunities on learning on this one have a competitive advantage. And ethics and responsibility. Really important, being clear of what we stand for, what the values of the company are to drive this. This end-to-end framework is what defines NTT Data's view on the Gen AI journey from a business perspective, from a corporate transformation perspective. And that's really important to take home. And I think this will be very, very well articulated beforehand to link it to the business. So the last 6 seconds, 3 key messages. Act now. There is no wait and see. If you wait and see, you can just change. Not going to happen. Find the right strategic partners on that journey. It won't be just one. And it's got to be a multitude complementary of partnerships that you will manage along the full end-to-end journey, and have an end-to-end framework and strategy and operating model to really get into the crawl, walk, run, or scale opportunity. With that, thank you very much. Looking forward to the rest of the day, and hope you enjoy it. Handing over to you.